There have been no easy victories for the 2024 Rangers on their hunt to win their first Stanley Cup final in 30 years. Well, ESPN E60 will debut its new documentary, No Easy Victories, the 1994 New York Rangers, on Tuesday, June 4th, highlighting how Stephen McDonald, the NYPD patrolman who was shot and paralyzed in 1986, was an inspiration to that 1994 championship team. I'm honored to have E60 and Outside the Lines host Jeremy Schaap to talk blue shirts and the new documentary. Jeremy, thanks for hopping on with this, man. No easy victory should be the theme of this 2024 Rangers team. Thanks for hopping on with this, man. How you feeling today?
I'm great, Brandon. Thanks so much for having me.
Before we get into talking about the documentary, which I'm so excited to hear about, let's get your thoughts on Game 4, that loss down in Sunrise, Florida, and just the series overall.
Well, 3 straight overtime games, right? I was there for Game 2 at the Garden last Friday. I took my 11-year-old son. It was his first in-person Rangers game, and if you were going to pick one, right, not a bad one. Yep. I was thinking to myself, okay, if this goes if this goes beyond one overtime, when am I going to take him home? I mean, we live in Connecticut. Are we going to get home at 3 a.m? Of course, he wanted to stay up until sunlight, but they ended it about what was it, about 13 minutes into that first overtime, something like that. Look, it's been great hockey. There are parallels with 94. Both teams won their first 7 games of the playoffs. Back in 94, they beat the Islanders. They crushed the Islanders. Then they beat the Capitals. We had the Capitals and the Canes, and now obviously the Panthers are proving to be quite formidable opponents, as everyone expected. But it's been a great moment for the organization, for the fans, that excitement in the Garden. I happen to be at the 7th game of the Knicks-Pacers series as well, 5 days before that, and obviously the life came out of the building pretty quickly because the Pacers just, ran away with it. But that energy in the Garden, a big playoff game for the Rangers, everybody in their jerseys. There are very few things in sports that equal that.
Well, you mentioned some of the parallels and the similarities on ice between this 2024 team and the 1994 team. Like, what else? Like, were you around the city? What do you remember about 30 years ago about that buzz and that historic run for that Rangers team?
Well, I was working at that time. I was working at ESPN, so it's been a long time. It's been 30 plus years. So I was working for ESPN at that time, and what I remember being in the sports media world, right? There are, in the population at large, obviously there are a lot of hockey fans, but in the sports media cohort, everybody's kind of a hockey fan. And I just remember that excitement, that enthusiasm, also mixed with, fear and terror. What if it doesn't happen? What if we lose to the Devils? Everybody was expecting a coronation, Game 5 of the final, when they had the 3-1 lead against the Canucks. But that Game 7, you could say both Game 7s, right, against the Devils and then against Vancouver, I would argue are the toughest tickets in New York sports history because, there is such loyalty, there is such dedication and commitment to the team on the part of the fans, but also because, of course, they had not been they had not experienced a championship at that point in 54 years, one of the great droughts for a proud franchise in the annals of top-tier North American sports. So, that excitement, of course, the Knicks were in it at that time, too. They went to the finals against the Rockets. It was a remarkable time to be in the sports world in New York, whether you were working in it or just a fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about from the media side of it and kind of just being a fan of playoff hockey competition. These guys are having moments this year like they had back in 94, like Mark Messier, the We Will Win. I got a chance to meet and speak with Stephane Matteau. Who do you think on this year's team will have the Matteau moment?
If it comes down to double overtime in Game 7 of the finals, I think I'm thinking about what Howie Rose was saying, he was calling that game, there's a hero out there. Maybe it was Gary Thorne. I don't remember. Everybody was thinking the same thing, though, basically, right? There's a hero down there. We just don't know who it is. I mean, certainly Goodrow at this point has stepped up. We saw we saw so many contributions from so many guys on the team. Panarin had an incredible regular season, got off to a hot start in the playoffs. Obviously, scoring against the Panthers is an entirely different proposition than what we saw against Washington and, frankly, against Carolina as well. There are a lot of candidates, and that's what's great about this team, right? Up and down. And I'm hardly Mr. Ranger, but when you look at the Zibanejad, and you look at the Kreiders, and you got the Panarins, and the Trocheks. It could be anybody, right? Fox. It could be anybody, and we've seen them do remarkable things. They've won the President's Trophy. Obviously, they had the best record in the league. They breezed through, the first round. And right now, this is a very stern test. And so in that sense, of course, we have another parallel as well with 94, when the Devils were the second best team in the league, and they knew that getting through them was going to be quite a task, as it was.
Let's talk about a lot of New York Rangers sports fans, both old and new, sometimes say this team is cursed, or this organization has been cursed. It was 54 years before they won it in 1994. Now we have 30 years. Why do you think they haven't been able to win a final since 1994? And if they lose the Eastern Conference final, are they a cursed franchise?
I don't believe in curses. I mean, I don't think I do. It's one of those say, when we're talking about curses, right, we're talking about the occult. Are there, and I think I talked about this with some people as we were doing the documentary, reliving 94. And you could call it a curse, which seems supernatural, right? Or you could talk about the unique pressures of being in New York. And you can talk about the way that organizations in New York, respond to those pressures, and how that might result in teams going a long time without winning, whether, it's the Rangers or the Jets or whatever. It's been 40 years now for the Islanders, too. It is remarkable, though. It's a franchise which is so proud, which has this history. The drought is part of the history, of course, and they've had so many great players, but the league, the league works with a salary cap. You can't just build super teams. All those kinds of things come into play when we talk about why you go 30 years in a league that's got, 30 teams? That's kind of the average. But, they've had their moments. They've had successes. They've had plenty of failures as well. This team seems well constituted, of course, to win another 2 games in this round and then see what happens with Edmonton and Dallas. But, it's tough. It's tough to win it all.
We had the Stanley Cup trophy in studio. I didn't touch it. I knew better. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to curse this team. But it's been fun.
Is that a thing? You can't touch it even if you're just like hoping they win?
I don't know. Everyone told me don't touch it, Brandon. So they must be feeling the pressure. I'm just the media guy.
I would have touched
here.
it.
All right, so let's get into this documentary. No Easy Victories, the 1994 New York Rangers. What's it about, and how did you become a part of the project?
Yeah, so, the team over at E60, we wanted to do something on the 30th anniversary of 1994. It's such a big moment in hockey history. The Rangers are one of the marquee franchises in the league, obviously. But we didn't want to tell the same story that's been told many times. There have been a lot of retrospective documentaries on the 1994 New York Rangers, and it's a great story. But we wanted to do something different. And the story that I think we tell resonates in a different way, because it's a story about the connection between that team and the organization and a true New York hero, Stephen McDonald, who was, of course, the patrolman who, as you mentioned, was shot, paralyzed in 1986, spent the rest of his life unable to walk, breathed without a respirator. But his message of forgiveness, first forgiving his assailant, and then going around the world to conflict zones, talking about the importance of forgiveness and faith and brotherhood and peace. And he became, to many people, one of the most important figures in the history of the city. And, no less a figure than Michael Daly, the great columnist for the New York Daily News for all those decades, said he saved the city. And Stephen McDonald was also the ultimate Rangers fan. And he was there at every game, and he was there with his son, Connor. And the story is really poignant, I think. His son, Connor, was born 6 months after he was shot. And Stephen and Connor got to experience their father-son relationship in many ways through the Rangers and through their passion for the Rangers and their attendance at all these Rangers games. And Connor, who's now an NYPD captain, remembers all of it vividly. Stephen died back in 2017 at the age of 59. And so this is a story weaving together that great Rangers team, how it was built, how it came to be, what the arrival of Mark Messier in 1991 meant, and then all the way through the playoffs after winning the President's Trophy like this team, but also the story of Stephen McDonald and his struggles and his triumphs. And he stands in a lot of ways for the city itself and for Rangers fans in the telling of this story.
And having someone or inspiration like that around the locker room really helps the players get into that we, not me, it's bigger than me mentality. I remember 2007, my Super Bowl year with the New York Giants, Coach Coughlin had Colonel Greg Gatson around the locker room. He also had him in the 2011 Super Bowl team as well. And you're talking about days where it's like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to go out. I don't want to practice. You're looking at a guy who's been through war zones, who lost his legs fighting for his country, fighting for something bigger than self. And it's like, I don't care what's going on within my body. I'm going to go out there, be appreciative of the opportunity that I have, and play for someone or something bigger than myself. So just having that inspirational piece in the locker room, like Officer McDonald, I'm sure there were days where Mark Messier and those guys just leaned on him for inspiration. So what are some of the things you learned about Officer McDonald and his family, as well as that 1994 Rangers team that you didn't know back then at the time?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Brandon. The inspiration, right? What it meant to the team, and this relationship, which meant so much to Stephen McDonald and his wife, Patty Ann, and his son, Connor. And it meant so much to the Rangers, too. And they've, presented a Stephen McDonald Award every year since 1987. We have a lot of video, archival footage of the award ceremonies over the years, talked to the players about the significance of it, and exactly what you're talking about. Stephen McDonald was there. Stephen McDonald was someone, who lived his life as a beacon. When he died, there are people, even now, there are people who continue, and I expect will continue to do so for some time, who talk about him in terms of sainthood, in terms of actual canonization, and the way that what he and his family derived from that relationship with the team, and the team really embraced him. The organization went to great lengths to create the award, include him. But the organization, as anyone involved with the Rangers, anyone who knew Stephen McDonald, anyone who's around Patty Ann now, and Connor knows, the organization gets just as much out of that relationship. And that's what this is really about. And, as a New Yorker, as somebody who remembers and was around, when Stephen McDonald was shot, when he was paralyzed, we know what that story means in New York, what his example has meant for so long. And it's just bringing those stories together in this documentary, which I think is really a natural fit.
Is there anything I'm missing out, or anything that our viewers should know about this documentary, which airs June 4th?
I mean, I'm proud of it. I know our team is proud of it at E60. I think it tells an important and inspirational story. There's great stuff from the players and the announcers, from Mike Keenan and Neil Smith, the coach and general manager, respectively. Again, it's a different kind of look at what happened in '94 with a very special team. And, one of the things that I'll really remember, in addition to the interviews with Patty Ann McDonald and Connor McDonald, is the interviews, I got to do with Adam Graves, who's so close to the McDonalds, who won the award, the Stephen McDonald Award, I think 4 times, whose father was also a police officer, felt that special connection with Stephen and Connor McDonald. And also, even now, Mark Messier, talking to him, how emotional he gets looking back on '94, what it meant to other people. And what I'll really remember is really asking him about, everybody remembers those moments, when it was finally over, that last face-off was over, they had the championship, and everybody remembers him grabbing the cup, and taking it from Gary Bettman. But I asked him, what do you remember about those moments? And he said gratitude, and got really emotional. That's one of those moments, Brandon.
Well, I'm very grateful that you took your time out of your day to come on and speak with us about the documentary, No Easy Victories. The 1994 New York Rangers airs June 4th. That's Tuesday on ESPN and ESPN+. Jeremy, thank you for coming on with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.